Hey, it's Greg with B-17 Archaeology. If you can take 2 seconds, hit the like button, subscribe, and then we'll dive right on in to this video. Hey, thank you for subscribing to us and hitting the like button. Hey, this episode I wanted to tell how I got involved with all this. Kind of an interesting story. It's been way long time ago. So, when my son was 3-4 years old, I built a Lionel train set that went around his room. So every night, it had all 4 seasons in each corner. Every night we put the train around before we went to bed. Had clouds in the ceiling. We were at a church rummage sale, and I found this model. And it was about the right scale to his Lionel train. And this is the actual model. So this one, he and I built some 23, 24 years ago. And we had it, once we built it, we painted it, put the stickers on, and you can see all the decals have pretty much seen better days. So we had it hanging on the ceiling with fishing line. I think every kid has done it. I know I did it when I was a kid. And when we turned the ceiling fan on, it kind of shook and shimmied like it was actually flying. So it kind of completed our bedroom train layout. So every night when I would put my son to bed, he'd always ask, "Dad, what'd that plane do? Why that plane?" So this was before the internet. I actually had to go to the library, use the Dewey Decimal System, dating myself again, and actually find a book on the B-17. So found a book, and I was telling him what it did and how many bombs and all the statistics that you can read anywhere you want. So ended up telling it, and then he'd ask for stories. So the more I looked into it, the more I became fascinated with this plane. And for a 1935 design, a 4-engine bomber, originally with a 6-man crew. So if you ever look at the data plate on the B-17, it has the manufacturer, the serial number, has the crew weight, and it always says 1,200 pounds. Now that was based on a 6-man crew with their chutes and full gear, weighing about 200 pounds each. So that's where the 1,200 came to. When they went up to the bigger crew, they never changed it. It stayed at 1,200 pounds. So a little bit of an interesting fact right there. So as I'm telling him the story, I'm getting fascinated. How many bullets these planes and how they were shot up, and they still flew. And so the first book I ever got and I read was actually Fortress Against the Sun, a very good read. B-17s in the South Pacific. So before I actually met my very good friend Earl, I read about his story, his flight into Pearl, the first U.S. piloted plane shot down during the war. And so I read the story as it went to Rabaul, the first offensive bombing mission in Rabaul, and on and on. Now, when I met Earl, he told me a lot of stories about it. So the Japanese had moved so fast that the bases on the islands throughout the South Pacific were overtaken so fast. Bombers would take off. By the time they came back to land, the Japanese had already secured the island. So they went to Townsend, Australia. For the first 6 months there, they wore Australian uniforms. They ate with the Australians. They bunked with the Australians because the U.S. supply lines could not get there. So just kind of a lot of interesting facts about it. I didn't realize that B-17s were actually in the South Pacific until I read this book. So it just kind of grew from there. And as I was reading the stories, I realized that other people were probably just as fascinated or almost as fascinated as I am. So I started putting this together and decided to tell the stories. And my first original concept was to tell an individual flight from the story, whatever happened, heroic flight, all the way through. And when I talked to some networks, my production cost was a little high to make this happen. So I decided to scale it down. They asked if I had a backup plan. So I decided, to do the surviving B-17s. Tell the stories of the surviving 50 B-17s from where they were built, what they did, how they got to where they are, what their future holds for them, and be able just to document their entire history. And in each episode, I wanted to include veterans to tell their stories, so kind of correlate some of the stories together. Now, when we did Starduster, we had Colonel Williams out there. He was actually stationed at March Field in 1940, 1941. Since the B-17 was there, kind of tied in. Archie Aitchison was a radio operator with the 15th Air Force, and his plane was actually built by Douglas 30-some planes before Starduster rolled off the factory line. Starduster is the only 15th Air Force B-17 still in existence. So everything kind of tied in, it went from there. So a very good friend of mine who passed away, Janice Olson, we talked on the phone several times. She gave me a lot of information, and she had asked, why do this? Because I told her story, how many doors were slammed in my face and closed and all this good stuff. So I told her, I said, it's a passion. And she says, no, it's not. And I'm sitting there going, what the hell? Yes, it is. This is a passion. She said, it's not a passion, it's a calling. For what you're doing to preserve history and these airmen stories, this is not a passion, this is a calling. You were called to do this to preserve history. So I gotta agree, this is my calling. My passion is somewhere else, but this is my calling, and I decided to continue it. Now, here in 2020, the COVID hit, we can't go out and film, so we decided to do a YouTube channel. And we can expand a little bit more. So in this episode, I'm telling you how I got started and all the pitfalls that we went through and all the success and the amazing veterans that we've met. And it all started with this model, 25 cents from a church rummage sale. And it led to B-17 Archaeology, surviving B-17s, and now here on our YouTube channel. Part of my story is the fascination, and I worked and have a network of friends in England, in Europe, that are actually archaeologists. They actually go to crash sites. So in my personal collection, I have relics to over 120 different B-17s. I have a list of the crew that were on them, whether they were shot down, POWs, whatever the circumstances may be. So I'll show you some of the pieces in a little bit. This is one piece that I have. So if you know what it is, shoot me a comment. I've asked a lot of people. My friend Colonel Williams, when I took it over to him after I got it, I'm like, hey Earl, you know what this is? Within a second, he told me what it is. So it's probably about 4 or 5 pounds. It's not a California avocado. I get that all the time. But if you know what it is, shoot me a comment. And if you're right, I'll send you something. Just kind of a fun piece. A lot of the B-17s out there today, as far as I know, there's only one that actually has it. Maybe 2 at this point that actually have this still on the actual B-17. So it's kind of a unique, rare piece. And I'll show you my collection. I'll highlight some of the bigger pieces that people have actually sent me. So with my network of archaeologists, they send me these pieces. Part of what I want to do this show, I want them to take you to one of their crash sites and show some footage and everything. Because what they do when they get these pieces, they sell them to collectors. And what they use the money for is to build monuments to the crew that perished on that particular flight, or to a particular bomb group or bomb squadron. So the pieces do go to collectors. There's a lot of crash sites over there. They send them to me. As long as I pay shipping, they send them to me. And what I do with them is I rotate them in some of the museums. So I will loan them to museums so that they can do it. I was contacted one time by Renee, and she had inquired why I was asking about a particular B-17, and I said, well, I have some relics to it from the crash site. And her father was actually on that plane. He survived the actual crash, came back, and lived a very long, happy life. But what I was able to do, and part of what we're doing is preserving history, Found out Renee had 2 other siblings. So I got shadow boxes. I had a picture of her dad. So I put it in there with the crew and what happened with the crew. And I gave them each a piece of their dad's plane. So that's kind of what we do. If we don't preserve history, especially for the families, it was very important that they give the pieces, or I give the pieces to the family. It's just kind of what we're doing here at B-17 Archaeology. It's about having fun on the film, but it's about preserving history. So let me show you some pieces, and I'll tell you where I got them. And some of them are pretty large pieces. The largest one I have is 8 foot long, about 30 inches wide. It's a recognizable piece. It's a skin, and you'd be amazed it only weighs maybe 10 pounds. Okay, so I want to showcase some of my personal collection. So this is my collection. 120 different B-17 relics. Most of them fit in small shoebox sizes, handful of pieces. Some of them just 1 or 2 pieces. But each of them has their serial number on it. And with that, I can get a missing air crew report. I can find out the crew that was on it, what happened to them. So this is my collection. Some of my pieces. Now, this is the biggest piece I have. This came from Germany. After the B-17 was shot down, it was actually used as part of a roof on a farm to prevent leaks. So this is actually the front section. The nose would have been here. This would have been the bombardier side window. This was the gun mount. So this was actually an F model. And here would have been the, what the heck? Come on, here would have been, let me try it again. Here would have been the navigator's window. Woo! Holy crap. I've talked about this piece so many times. So this is it, and each one I have the serial numbers attached to the big pieces. Some of the other cool pieces, this one actually came from a crash site here in the States. And it actually has the serial number on it, which is 412054. This is the cover between the engines on 1 and 2, and it still has the olive drab on it. So that one's like kind of a cool piece. I have a wingtip, part of a wing still with the running light on it. It's the vertical stabilizer. That's kind of a cool piece because it still has it. This is actually off a ball turret. This came out of Yuma, Arizona. And this was the ammo hatch on the ball turret. So we'll be visiting that crash site as soon as it cools down. This one's kind of a unique piece. This came from Skipper and the Kids. And the cool piece or part about this one is if you look, you can see some of the lettering that actually was on it. So kind of another special piece. And then I have a lot of pieces that came from Kingman, Arizona. This is actually a fuel hatch, which there are 4 on top of the wings. And I have a dozen or so of these. Now, when we were redoing Tulare, Preston's Pride up there, it's sad. It was vandalized over the number of years, and it was missing 3 of the hatches. So because of going out and finding stuff, we actually took 3 of them that came off B-17s that were scrapped, and we actually put it on the B-17 known as Preston's Pride. One of the pieces I got, and it's identifiable off an aircraft, is actually on Stardust. There's actually a handle off the crew hatch. So what I do when I find a piece out there, and then there's actually a B-17 on display that does not have an original piece, I will take that piece, but when I put it on to the mechanism, I take the crew name that was lost in the plane and I put their names on it, so when I put the piece together, it actually becomes part of the airplane. So it's kind of a cool piece thing that we do. And one last piece. Now this one is a little heavy, so I'll just drag this one. Now, this is a prop off of a G model. It's a high altitude prop because it's a little bit wider. And if you notice, they were painted yellow from the front side so everybody can see where the spinning blades were. Now, every B-17 out there has yellow on the back, when in fact, the B-17s were not painted yellow on the back because you weren't supposed to walk from the back to the front. And if you did, I guess it was your own damn fault that you didn't make it. So this is one of the blades. It's got to be at least 100, 125 pounds. And solid aluminum. And just kind of a cool piece. This one was actually found in Armageddon, New Mexico. Armageddon? Somewhere in New Mexico. And it was actually stuck in the sand, out in white sands. There we go, I got it. So it's stuck in white sand, so it actually preserved the paint. So this is my collection. Let me take this one out of the way. I'm okay. So that's pretty much it for this episode. Our next episode, actually going to be interviewing Steve Snyder. He's the one that wrote the book Shot Down, based on his dad's life story as a B-17 crew member. It's an incredible read. I've read it a couple times. It's fascinating. Steve's a great guy, so we're going to do it on Zoom. So that's going to be our next episode. We're trying to cover all things B-17, have some fun with it, and kind of show why I have a calling. And this is it. So thanks for watching B-17 Archaeology. Don't forget to like us, subscribe, and remember, B-17 Archaeology is a cool place to be.